Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, dated 18th January 2026. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and the Indian Express newspapers which are relevant for your examination. In the initial two topics, we have included two mains practice questions which will be useful for your upcoming mains examination. In the first topic, we will try to understand various aspects of production linked incentive scheme. After that, in our second topic, we will look into various aspects of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms with a special focus on arbitration. After that, in our simplified section, we will take up 5 articles and we will try to explain them in simplest language possible to enrich your understanding of the newspapers. Additionally, we have also incorporated some prelims pointers which is going to be crucial for your upcoming prelims and mains examinations. So, have a look on them also and stay tuned. So, let's start our discussion with the first topic, that is production linked incentive scheme. As you would be aware of the fact that on 1st February 2026, the budget will be laid on the floor of the Lok Sabha. And the word budget is not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. Instead, Article 112 talks about the annual financial statement. And what exactly is the budget? That is an estimate of revenue and the expenditure of government for any particular financial year. Also, whenever the budget is announced, there are different allocations that are given to different sectors. There are different schemes, policies that are also announced for the different sectors. And that is one of the reasons before the final budget is announced on 1st February, the different sectors makes various demands with the government for increased allocations, better schemes, better policies, so that these sectors can sustainably grow in future. And in that line itself, the wind energy companies are seeking production linked incentive based supply for the domestic manufacturing in the long term, and in the short term they are asking for decreasing the import duty for certain critical components which are used by the wind energy sectors. And this will actually help us in overall growth and viability of the wind energy sector as per the people related to this wind energy sectors, the stakeholders involved in the wind energy sector. And this particular topic is related to your GS paper 2, government policies and interventions, and this is also related to GS paper 3, growth and development. Now we'll try to understand what exactly is the production linked incentive scheme. So this scheme was a government initiative that was launched in 2020, and you would be aware of the fact that first case of COVID-19 came in 2019 from China. First case in India came in early 2020 from Kerala. And subsequently, when the infections rose multifold, there were strict lockdown measures, quarantine measures, etc. that were in place, and that created supply chain disruptions. For example, we are highly dependent on import of certain commodities. For example, let's suppose in the solar industry, the photovoltaic solar modules, for that certain components that we uses, we were dependent on the imports from China. The pharma industry, they were also dependent on certain key starting materials, active pharmaceutical ingredients. They were importing all these APIs from China, and when the China went with zero COVID policy, where they went with the strict lockdown and quarantine measures, that created supply chain disruptions. And all these industries and overall economy, whether it was dependent for the import of the raw materials or for the finished product, that suffered. So to address that supply chain disruption and also to boost domestic manufacturing, government launched this production linked incentive scheme, under which the incentives will be given to these 14 sectors based on their incremental sales. And how that will work? For example, let's suppose 100 rupee was the sales of any one company XYZ Limited in year 2021. In 2022, let's suppose they increase their sales to 150 rupees. So their incremental sales is 50 rupees. So government will give certain percentage of this increased sales as the reward, as the support to this particular industry. Why? Because they are focusing on the domestic manufacturing, point number one. Second, they are investing more to improve the competitiveness of their product. Why? Because until and unless they will invest in better technologies, better methods of the production, the competitiveness of their product will not be there. And in that case, probably it will be difficult for them to increase their sales. So they are also investing in improving their overall efficiency. Plus, when they are investing, they are producing more, their incremental sales are improving. That also means that there is an employment generation that is happening. And when employment is coming from this particular investment by the companies, then people's poverty will reduce, people's purchasing power will improve, and household consumption expenditure will improve, overall demand of goods and services will improve, and that will also help us in improving the overall growth of the GDP. And these are the 14 sectors that were covered with an outlay of around 1.97 lakh crore. And these supports that were being announced, that were being given to the different sectors, they were not even for all the sectors. It was as low as 1% for electronics and technology product, and it was as high as 20% for critical key starting drugs and certain drug intermediaries. Based on the support that a particular industry needs, these incentives were differing. Also, if you see the significance of this scheme, it has helped in boosting the domestic manufacturing. For example, the mobile manufacturing that grew almost 50%. For example, India's mobile phone export also increased from 2.13 lakh crore in 2020-21 to 5.25 lakh crore in 2024-25 as per Ministry of Commerce and Industry. You can see the Apple also started assembling their phones in India itself. In Noida, there is a big Samsung mobile assembly unit. So this mobile manufacturing sector took a major benefit from this production linked incentive scheme. Also, it created jobs. Why? Because as we discussed, when the companies are investing more in the company, they need more hands for production of goods and services, and that is the reason there is also the job that is being created. Along with that, there are certain labor intensive sectors like textile industry, where if the investment will come, that will also help us in creating more jobs, because they are the labor intensive sectors. We need more hands for producing textiles. And if you see again this data, which is as of March 2025, the investment that was realized in PLI scheme, that was 1.76 lakh crore. The sales was around 16.5 lakh crore, and it has created more than 12 lakh direct and indirect jobs. Also, it has helped in attracting the foreign direct investment. Why? Because if these are the companies who are improving their sales, that means their revenues are improving, their profits are also improving. The business expansion can happen of that particular company, and the future prospects of that company is very good. And if certain foreign direct investment or FDI will come in that company, so probably this investor will be able to grow their money multifold. Why? Because this company is improving their sales, this company is improving their revenue and the profits. So that is the reason there are around 1.5 lakh crore in the foreign investment that came under the PLI itself, and this is the data from Niti Aayog, and this was the data from around 2020 to 2024. Also, it provided support for the local supply chains, especially at the local level. There were various supply chain disruptions that were happening. So it has helped in ensuring that supply chain remains consistent. Whatever the gaps are there, it has helped in plugging that with better investment. Also, it has led to better exports, increased exports. And as you would be aware of the fact that when we see the four components of the GDP based on the expenditure method, there is this household consumption expenditure, private investment, government spending, and net of export. So with this PLI scheme, the privates are motivated to invest more. There is more job creation that is happening. With that, people will have more money in their hands. So household consumption expenditure, the expenditure that is being done by me and you, that will also increase. And when the competitiveness of the products are improving, why? They are shifting to better technologies, better methods. The competitiveness of the export will also improve as compared to the global peer products. In that case, the export will also improve. When all these three components are increasing, that means we will see a better GDP growth, better GDP numbers. Also, it has led to technology transfer and value additions. For example, the incentives tied to production attract the global players. Also, there was research and development push and innovations, especially in certain sectors like EV batteries, and MSME growth and expansion that was also possible. So this MSME contribute more than 40% to our exports, and when they were also getting the PLI support, that has also helped in expanding that MSME. Also, institutional reforms, that there was single window clearances, ease of doing business. That was also the focus of the PLI scheme. Also, incentives that were being given, the government tries to integrate the technology so that that can be also processed in a simple and efficient manner. But there are certain challenges impeding the success of the scheme. For example, there are economic headwinds. For example, let's suppose it was announced in 2020. After that, there are various geopolitical complications that world has witnessed. For example, Russia-Ukraine war started. Iran-Israel skirmishes happened in 24-25. Or recent geopolitical tensions that are going on, be it in Greenland, be it between US and Iran, and between India and Pakistan also. There were certain disruptions that happened in the month of April and May, when India targeted several terrorist sites in Pakistan. So there are different geopolitical complications that world is facing, and that is also leading to supply chain disruption. So these economic headwinds that are there, that also impacts the success of the PLI scheme. Along with that, the inflation that was consistently very high, especially from the period of 2020 to 2025, especially the food inflation, that reduced the purchasing power of the people. And when the purchasing power of the people reduced, so that was also not helping in creating a more demand of the goods and services in the market. And when demand of goods and services was not being created in the market, obviously companies were not motivated to invest more in the sector or in that particular company. Also, limited coverage of the sectors. There are various sectors who are demanding benefits, for example, wind energy itself. So government only announced it for the 14 sector itself. So that was again one of the major challenge, that there were different demands for the different sectors, that support should be extended to us also. Then there is delayed disbursement of the incentives. For example, this was reported by the Foxconn, which is a semiconductor company. Then the limited focus is on innovation and the technology, that most of this, there are various reports who said that the companies are focusing on the value addition with more focus on the assembly, and not focusing on coming with better products, shifting to better technologies or more innovation. They are not coming with certain products who can create a huge demand in the foreign market. Also, inadequate infrastructure support. For example, the logistics cost is still high. As per various estimates, it is around 14 to 18% of GDP. And when logistics cost is very high, that adds to the cost of the product, and that also doesn't help in increasing the sales of the company. Then bureaucratic hurdles and complex approval process. For example, there are various reports that said that these incentives that should be given to the companies who are eligible to get the benefits, there were certain delays that were reported in disbursement of those incentives also. So that was also kind of demotivation for these companies. Also, there were supply side issues, that there were inconsistent supply of the raw materials. For example, especially the food processing sector, when there was incessant rainfall, the climate change that is happening, that creates that creates complexity for the consistent supply of the raw materials. Also, if you see that there are certain sectors who benefited a lot, like mobile manufacturing, etc., but there are certain sectors who could not take major benefits because of lack of proper technological advancement and other issues related to the economic headwinds and disruptions that they kept on facing throughout after the launch of the scheme. So what should be done? What should be the way forward? First of all, we can expand the sectoral coverage. There can be certain objective criterias that can come from the government. Based on that, they can announce that these are the sectors that will get the benefits. For example, certain labor intensive sectors. For example, certain sectors who are in distress, but they are having the strategic importance for the nation. So those are the sectors that can be supported. Also, we can simplify the approval processes. For example, with the GSTN portal that is there, where along with that the other portals where we are noting down all the data related to the sales of the company, export of the company, etc. So this technological advancement, these portals and the digital revolution, these digital public infrastructure needs to be utilized, so that there is no delay in the disbursement of those incentives, because that is one of the most important incentive for the company. Along with that, certain small companies, MSMEs, they need working capital, like the money for the electricity, for paying the wages of the people, or for the fossil fuel consumption that MSME unit is doing, working capital needs. So if these incentives will be provided in a time bound manner, the working capital needs of the MSME will also be fulfilled. Also, focus should be on the research and development and innovation. The focus should not only be on the improving the sales of the company, but the company should ensure that they are focusing more on coming with better products which can create a greater global demand, and that will actually ensure that overall manufacturing target that we have made, that to increase it to 25% of GDP, contribution of manufacturing 25% of GDP, that is the aim that we have created as per national manufacturing policy. So if we will come with better products by investing more in research and development innovation, probably we will be able to garner better value from the better products that we are coming with the research and development. Also, if you see 0.6 to 0.7% is the expenditure by India as percentage of GDP on research and development, and majority of that is coming from the public sector itself. So that is the reason private sector also needs to take the burden or take the role and responsibility of the research and development. Also, we can strengthen the infrastructure, especially the logistics. For example, multimodal logistics parks are being developed. Similarly, these logistics can be simplified and these logistics can also be improved. That will ensure that the shelf life of the products are also getting improved. That will ensure that we are able to supply the finished product to the ultimate consumers in a time bound manner. Also, we should focus on the skilling and human capital development. Why? Because some of these companies can shift to the technological advancement like AI, mechanization, Internet of Things, and that can lead to certain people that can lead to a condition where certain people might lose their jobs. That is the reason the focus should be on lifelong learning or the skills that can help in making people employable for the future time also, even with the technological advancement. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. Moving towards our next topic, that is, has an arbitration council been constituted? So the context of this topic is that nearly 6 years after the 2019 amendment that was done to the Arbitration and Conciliation Act of 1996, the Union government is yet to constitute the Arbitration Council of India, and that is envisaged as the central regulatory and promotional body for the institutional arbitration. Now, this is related to your GS paper 2, Alternative Dispute Resolution, Judiciary and Indian Constitution. So, before looking into the background of the Arbitration Council of India, let's try to understand what are the different types of ADR mechanism. And before looking into different types of ADR mechanism, the first question that also should come in your mind, why exactly do we need these kind of ADR mechanisms? The reason for that is the huge pendency of the cases. The need for faster resolution of disputes. For example, as per this National Judicial Data Grid, for the High Court, there are more than 63,71,132 cases that are pending across different High Courts. Similarly, for the National Judicial Data Grid of Supreme Court of India, there are more than 70,286 civil cases and more than 18,969 criminal cases. Similarly, for the district courts, there are more than 4,69,76,232 pending cases. So, if you include all this pendency of the cases, more than 63 lakhs in high courts, more than 4 crores in district courts, and more than 89,255 in Supreme Court. All this will culminate into more than 5 crore cases which are pending across different courts in India. And we need to understand that, let's suppose there is a company, okay, and they invested certain amount, and whatever the investment that they did, so there was, let's suppose, some litigation between the promoters or the owners of the company. Now, there was a stay that was awarded, or there was an order that was given that status quo needs to be maintained. The owners cannot build this industry or this manufacturing plant further. Whatever the status quo is there, that needs to be maintained. Now, the people who have invested the money in this particular plant, in this particular industry, until and unless the dispute will be resolved, they will not be able to do any manufacturing and they will not be able to earn anything on the invested amount. And that is the reason The faster resolution of disputes is very important for the economy. Similarly, for the matrimonial disputes, family related disputes. If there will be a case that will be going on a date after date, that creates a mental agony, that creates anxiety for the persons, that also take a toll on the financial resources of the people. And that is the reason there are various alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that are proposed that can help us in faster resolution of disputes, and that can also help us in addressing this huge pendency of the cases. And there are different types of ADR. For example, one is the negotiation, where the parties are settling disputes themselves through the discussions, deliberations between themselves. And this is the most basic and the widely used method. It is mainly used in business, legal, diplomatic and everyday cases. For example, let's suppose there is a room and there are two UPSC aspirants who are living in this room itself. Now this person A has an habit of studying for preparing examination in the daytime, and this person B has an habit of preparing in the night time. Now the problem is that when A wants to sleep in the night, B wants to keep the lights on. Why? Because he will be studying, and that is creating disputes between themselves. And because of the dispute, they are also not able to focus on their studies. So one day the sense prevailed and they both sat together and they discussed ki, see, we both came here for the preparation of the UPSC examination, and clearing this examination is very important for our career. So let's come with the Madhyam Marg or middle path, that you will also try not to sleep till 11 PM and I will also try to wind up my studies by 11 PM. Why? Because in any case I have to give examination, whether it is prelims examination, mains examination, the personality test during daytime. So they both discussed, they both deliberated among themselves, and then they came with the solution, and that led to resolution of the dispute. So that is the most basic form, that is negotiation. That can happen between any of the persons who have certain grievances. Then you have the mediation, where the facilitator will help parties communicate and reach agreement. Outcome is non-binding unless both agree. And let's suppose there is person C who is living in another room. He came and he is giving certain option to these people A and B, that this can be one of the solution that you people can follow. And also there is this Supreme Court accreditation, which says that for becoming a mediator, 40 hours of training, 10 settlements, 20 mediations that are necessary. And this is most common in family, business and community disputes. Okay. So what exactly we have to understand the difference between mediation and conciliation is that, first of all, in the mediation, the facilitator, this person see from different room, he is just helping parties to communicate and reach agreement. He is not proposing any new solution, and this is more common in family, business and community disputes, whereas conciliation is more common in and more used in employment, consumer and commercial matters. Here, in the conciliation, the third party proposes a solution. In this case, let's suppose there is dispute between employer and employee, so there can be a conciliator that will propose a solution. That what can be the solution that can help in resolution of dispute between employer and employee. And whatever the settlement that is coming, that is binding only if both party accept it, both parties sign it, only then that will be acceptable. Again, this is less formal than arbitration. What happens in the case of arbitration? Here, there will be a neutral tribunal that will be created, and that will give a final and the binding award on the dispute, and now that will be acceptable. So this is less formal than the court. The rules are relaxed, and also there is this limited judicial review, role. Also, there is no appeal that lies in the cases of arbitration award. Why? Because if again the appeal will be allowed, that will further lead to high pendency of the cases. But it is allowed in certain rare cases where it is being said in the higher courts that certain facts were not kept in front of the tribunal, or certain new facts has emerged after the award was given by the arbitration tribunal. So in certain cases, yes, appeal can lie, appeal is allowed. Also, it is common in commercial, international and infrastructure disputes, that majorly that whatever the disputes that are happening between different businesses, corporations, etc., there we witness the arbitration.
Now there is an act for the arbitration, that is Arbitration and Conciliation Act of 1996, that governs the overall arbitration landscape in India. And there was an amendment that was done in 2019, and that proposed that there will be an Arbitration Council of India that will be established, and they will promote institutional arbitration. The simple meaning of institutional arbitration that we can understand, that there will be dedicated institutions that will be created, and they will help us in ensuring that the parties are getting their disputes resolved. Also, even after the 6 years, 6 years has passed after this amendment was done, this Arbitration Council of India hasn't been constituted yet. And what is the proposed mandate of the Arbitration Council of India? First of all, it will act as the central regulator and promoter of the arbitration in India. They will also grade different arbitral institutions, whatever the institutions are there, based on their appeals, based on their orders that are coming, they will grade it. Also, they will recognize the professional bodies accrediting arbitrators. They will also maintain a repository of arbitral awards, so that they can also serve as a good reference for the future awards. For example, the Supreme Court is called as court of record, that whatever the judgments that they will be giving, that will also be taken into account for giving any future judgment. Also, reform and standardize the arbitration practices. All these was the mandate. The composition, there will be a chairperson who will be appointed by the Union government, and that will be appointed after the consultation with the Chief Justice of India. The members of this Arbitration Council of India, that will include certain executive nominees and ex officio officials. Okay? The exact persons that information is still not out, who will be the part of this. So here it is said that the chairperson could be a former judge of Supreme Court, a former Chief Justice of Judge or High Court, or an eminent person with expertise in arbitration. In addition, the council was to comprise ex officio members from the executive, right? Now, what we need to understand, that there were certain criticisms that this amendment drew. For example, it was said that since the majority of the powers are given to the executive for the nomination or the appointment of the members and the chairperson, there can be a case that these people might influence the decisions. Why? Because their appointment is coming from the executive itself. Also, there was this Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee, which also submitted its report in July 2017 related to High Level Committee on Arbitration. And based on those recommendations, actually the amendments were done. Also, as the B.N. Sri Krishna Committee said that continued dominance of ad hoc arbitration in India is primarily attributable to strong preference for procedural autonomy. That whatever the institutions are there, they want certain autonomy related to the procedures that they need to follow. For example, on what day they will meet, what is the frequency of the next cases, or what is the procedures with regard to the laying down of the evidences, etc. These institutions wants autonomy, and that is one of the reason why we are also witnessing that still there is confusion and we could not see a proper Arbitration Council of India. So the Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee said that whatever this procedural autonomy is there, the preference, that is reinforced by persistent skepticism towards the domestic arbitral institutions, particularly with respect to the independence and administrative competence. Bringing this trust deficit is critical if Indian institutions are to revive the established global bodies. So again, if there will be the chairperson and the members who are coming from the executive itself, that will not help in bridging the trust deficit, and probably again people will not give priority to these institutions. Why? Because they think that there are no procedural autonomy that are given. These people might be influenced by the government decisions. Now, if you see the history of ADR in India, so in ancient time we had the Yagnavalk, Shreni, Kula. Shrenis were the trading guilds. They were also acting as the dispute resolution bodies. Then in British and colonial time, we had the Civil Procedure Code 1908 that also provided for certain aspects of ADRs. Post-independence, we had the Legal Services Authority Act 1987 that provided for the NALSA, and Arbitration and Conciliation Act of 1996, based on which we see the present shape of ADR in India. Now, what are the different advantages of the ADR. Before looking into the advantages, there is also this draft arbitration and conciliation bill 2024. Some of the major proposals that are coming, for example, it redefines the arbitral institutions as a body conducting arbitration under the own or agreed rules. So that is to some extent giving procedural autonomy. It removes requirement of Supreme Court, High Court designation of arbitral institutions, more autonomy that is being provided. It also expands their institutional powers with regard to the extended timelines for awards, reduced arbitrator fees for the delay, also substituting the award. So the major objective of this particular bill is to reduce the court intervention and the delays. And also the limited judicial interventions that are provided, for example, court powers to grant interim relief that is restricted to before the arbitration begins on that case or after award is passed. When the case is still sub judice, then limited judicial powers are there. Then section 9(2) that is being inserted, that is also amended. 90 days period to commence arbitration starts from the date of interim relief application. Also, there are certain other sections that are introduced for emergency arbitrator proceedings can begin. The criticism of this draft bill is that court-like powers are shifted to arbitral institutions without resolving the credibility concerns, without understanding that whether these people are qualified, they have the complete knowledge, and whether they can give the proper awards. And also this creates a risk of weakening the judicial safeguards that are there. Now the advantages of the ADR that we were witnessing, first of all, it can maintain the confidentiality. For example, disputes are resolved in private, the disputes related to family, marriage, adoptions, etc., that people are generally skeptical to share in the public domain, they can be resolved maintaining the sensitivity of the information. Also, it is cost effective because this is generally more affordable than the litigation, because let's suppose that if there is a person who is going to High Court, Supreme Court or the District Court, he or she needs to hire an advocate, or there are court fees that are involved. So all that will be less in these ADR mechanisms. Also, it can save the time because there are flexible procedures that are followed by these ADR institutions, and that can actually help us in timely delivery of the awards related to any of the dispute. Also, it is less stressful because there are informal settings that lowers the emotional and the procedural stress. Along with that, it can be highly useful in the intimate matters, family matters. Also, it is more creative and they can come with the sustainable solutions which can provide win-win situations for all the parties. So that can be also acceptable. Why? Because there are procedural autonomy and flexibility that is provided to these ADRs. Also, expert involvement can also be there. For example, there is an option to appoint specialized neutrals, arbitrator, mediators, etc., who can propose certain innovative solutions that can provide grievance redressal mechanisms to all the parties. Also, the greater control, for example, parties have more influence over the process and the outcomes, which is not generally the case with the traditional or the other forms of court like the High Courts and the Supreme Court. Also, it can help in disposing the time, reducing the average disposal time of the cases. For example, if you see, be it in the civil case or in the criminal case, the average disposal time is in India is much greater as compared to the Council of Europe, and because of which that also limits the ease of doing business, that adds to the cost to the companies, and that also leads to various kinds of anxiety, stress, etc. to the family, especially in the case of family matters. Then you have the certain challenges also. For example, that in most of the cases except arbitration, that whatever the agreements are there, they are non-binding, and there are cases we have seen that people go with this as an option, and then subsequently they also appeal or they file cases in the courts, subsequently burdening the judiciary again. Also, loose evidence rules. For example, decisions may rely on incomplete info. Plus, there are various powers that are given to the courts, like for example, contempt of court, and that is one of the reason people will probably be not ready to mislead the court or give wrong information, which is not the case with these ADR institutions. So there may be decisions that may be coming without complete information. Also, power imbalances. For example, dominant party may skew the results altogether, and also the complex legal issues, they are not suitable for these ADRs. Why? Because courts are more competent. They can also involve certain amicus curiae or the experts based on which they can award a better decision. they can come with a better decision. And then no precedent, for example, outcomes don't guide the future cases as such, which was the case that in the Supreme Court, they are the court of record. Whatever the judgments are, they act as a guide for the future cases. Limited appeals, arbitration decisions mostly final, and that may be the case that the aggrieved person may not have an option to appeal further. Also, the rising cost, for example, skilled neutrals can be expensive, and in that case the people will not look up to these ADRs, rather than they will prefer going with the normal courts, whether it is district court, high court or the Supreme Court. Also, cross border enforcement, that also depends on the international treaties, and that further limits its effectiveness. What is the path ahead? What is the way forward? First of all, there are certain reforms that are suggested for ADR in the 3-year action agenda from 2017-18 to 2019-20 by Niti Aayog. First of all, there can be a judicial performance index that can track and improve the district and subordinate court performance, and that can aid the high courts and the chief justices in reducing delays. And if that will be done, if there will be a proper oversight mechanism, that will also limit the need of the ADR. Also, separate administrative cadre, we can create a judiciary specific administration reporting to the chief justice to ensure judicial independence and efficient management. All India Judicial Services, which all India services can be created under Article 312. There are various debates that keeps on happening, that whether there is need for an all India Judicial Services that can help us in addressing the needs of vacancies in the various courts for the different judicial offices. Also, we can boost the ICT use. For example, we can prioritize the court automation, electronic case and schedule management, migrate all courts to unified national court software. There are different portals that can be also utilized, so that all the stakeholders are getting information related to that case in a time bound manner, because different delays happens for the reason, for example, on any of the day there may be a certain advocate who might not be present. Next day there can be certain other issue. So if there will be a portal based on which everyone can get an idea on which date in which court I am having my case, then it will also help us in ensuring that probably the case can be decided in an efficient and effective manner. Also, shift the workload from regular courts, implement Commercial Courts Act 2015 in major cities, set up separate traffic courts and amend fine payment process to reduce the congestions. So all that, this can also help us in de-burdening the regular courts, and also increase awareness with the people with regard to the different ADR mechanisms that are available. That can also ensure that the people will be looking up to these mechanisms as the viable solutions. Also, we have already seen certain reforms which were recommended by the Justice B.N. Krishna committee with regard to the arbitration, that there is need for institutional autonomy, strengthening administrative competence of the people involved, and also we need to build domestic and international confidence with regard to the ADR and particularly arbitration, that can actually provide certain solutions to different litigations in a time bound manner. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. Moving towards our simplified section, the first topic is what happened to ISRO's PSLV C-62 mission. This is related to your GS paper 3, space technology, achievements of Indians in science and technology, and indigenization of technology. And this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 11. So this PSLV, which has failed 4 times, that it could not achieve its intended objectives, but this is the first time that it has failed along with certain foreign payloads. For example, this PSLV C-62 that was launched, it was having this EOS-N1 satellite, which is a surveillance satellite from DRDO, but it also had various other payloads from Thailand, UK, Nepal, etc. And what exactly happened on January 12, the ISRO's PSLV C-62 mission that lifted off from Sriharikota, that was comprising EOS-N1 surveillance satellite from DRDO and 15 other. Within minutes, ISRO said the mission had encountered an anomaly during the end of PS3 stage, and that a detailed analysis was initiated. Also, later at the briefing by the ISRO chairman, he said that the performance was as accepted, but up to near the end of the rocket's 3rd stage, which is called as the PS3. There are different stages that are involved after the rocket is launched, and then ultimately satellite reaches to its designated orbit. Also, there was increased disturbance in the vehicle roll rates, and then followed by a deviation in the flight path, and because of which, towards the end of the third stage, rocket was spinning uncontrollably enough for it to not be able to continue on its planned path. And as of January 16, the ISRO hasn't published any statement about the root cause of mishap. They have given us an idea about the major things that has happened. But what was the exact cause? Was it certain issue in the fuel or certain other things because of which this happened? And also there are 15 other co-passengers from other countries. For example, one was from Thailand. They said the malfunction late in third stage caused an altitude control abnormality and vehicle deviated from its trajectory, preventing the rocket from deploying the satellites that it was carrying towards the intended orbits. Also, this anomaly resembled the events preceding the failure of the PSLV C-61 that happened on May 18, 2025. What happened with PSLV C-61? The rocket exactly failed after the first two stages, with the third stage not performing normally, means whatever the rate at which it should perform, they didn't. Also, what happens that there is this failure analysis committee that is constituted, and that was constituted after C-61 mission also failed, and they looks into the root causes of the mishap, and they submitted its report to the Prime Minister's office, PMO, in mid 2025. This Department of Space comes under the Prime Minister's office itself, under the Honorable Prime Minister itself. Also, the ISRO chairman is the secretary of the Department of Space. Also, this can be the potential prelims question. This FAC, or the Failure Analysis Committee, is not a standing body. This doesn't function for 12 months at all. Rather, they are the body of experts within the ISRO, but instead an entity. The ISRO chairman constitutes in the event of any major incident or any accident that happens, and its responsibility is to reconstruct the chain of events that happened after the launch and up till the failure, and then get an idea ki what exactly happened, what involved the failure, why exactly this happened. Also, committee members include experts within the ISRO as well as relevant experts from academia. It has also been known to include former ISRO chairman to again get their expertise. Also, FAC submits its final report to the Indian government. ISRO chairman is the secretary of the Department of Space, which functions under the PMO itself. Now, whatever the report that they submitted earlier for GSLV F10 mission, so they said that FAC concluded that lower liquid hydrogen tank pressure at the time of cryogenic upper stage engine ignition caused by the leakage of vent and relief valve resulted the malfunctioning of the fuel booster turbo pump, leading to mission abort command and subsequent failure of the mission. And whatever the C-61 FAC report that was submitted, that is still not available in the public domain. And this PSLV 662, this, as we said, that this has failed. PSLV is the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle that has failed 4 times so far, but this was first time it has failed by carrying customer satellites from other countries. And this mission, that is onboarding other countries, was facilitated by one of the ISRO's commercial arm, that is New Space India Limited. Also, the people that were on board, some of them were insured, so obviously they will be getting their value for whatever the satellite cost was there. India's EOS N1 was not insured. Also, the cost of this EOS N1 will be borne by India itself. Now, there are different ISRO launch vehicles. For example, first rocket that was developed by ISRO was Satellite Launch Vehicle. Then you have the SLV. After the successor of SLV, we had the Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicle. Then came the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, or the PSLV. That is also called as the workhorse of the ISRO because of the continued success that it has provided. This is third generation, fourth stage launched vehicle. First and third stage are the solid fuels, means there are 4 stages. So initially the first stage will be solid. It will provide greater thrust. Then the third will also be solid. Third and fourth are liquid fuel. The capacity of this, it can deliver Earth observation, remote sensing satellites, and it is used to launch satellites of lower mass, around 1400 kgs. There are different variants of PSLV, and this launches satellites in low inclination, low Earth orbit, GTO, and Certain important launches that happened, that was October 1994, that was the first successful launch. Then Chandrayaan 1, that was launched in 2008, and Mars Orbiter mission, that was launched in 2013. Also, PSLV is first Indian launch vehicle to be equipped with liquid stages. So there is this low Earth orbit. So that is at the height of around 160 to 2000 kilometer. It is close to Earth. It is the fast orbit. It is mainly used in remote sensing, Earth observation, etc. Then you have the medium Earth orbit from 2000 up till 3500 786 kilometer. That is mainly used by the navigation satellites. Then you have the geostationary orbit, or GEO. Height is 35,786 kilometer. Here the main feature is that satellite appears to be fixed at the any one point on Earth itself, and that is the reason it is used for communication in the weather forecasting. For example, whatever the dish antennas that are there, they are fixed. They are fixed at one location itself. Why? Because that satellite is kept in stationary orbit, or the GEO itself, and that will appear fixed over one point from the Earth itself. Also, then we have the polar orbit that passes over north and south pole. It covers entire Earth as a planet rotates. It is used for mapping, environmental monitoring. Then we have the sun synchronous orbit, or SSO, that it is one kind of special polar orbit. They passes over same place at same local time daily. It is used in imaging. It is used in climate and weather studies. Then you have the GTO, that is the elliptical intermediate orbit used to move a satellite from the low Earth orbit to geostationary orbit. That is also called as temporary parking orbit. So this transfer orbit is an elliptical transfer orbit that is used to place satellite from this LEO ultimately to geostationary orbit. So once any of the satellite will be parked in GTO first, and then from there it will be transferred to this geostationary orbit. That is its designated place. Then you have the geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle, GSLV, that is the fourth stage, three-staged launch vehicle. This is much more powerful rocket, and that is the reason this is also called as the Bahubali, especially GSLV Mark 3. It carries satellite much deeper into the space. It has indigenous cryogenic upper stage. Capacity of this is that it can deliver communication satellites. It also carries heavier satellites up to 2200 kgs to the geo transfer orbit. Then you have, it can also carry 10,000 kg satellites to low Earth orbit. For example, Chandrayaan 2 was launched with this launch vehicle Mark 3. This is three-stage launch vehicle, 2 solid propellant and 1 core stage comprising liquid and cryogenic stage. Capacity 4,000 kg of satellite into GTO, 8,000 kg payload into low Earth orbit. And also Mark 3 version have made ISRO entirely self-sufficient in launching its satellites. We have no dependency. Also, what we need to understand that LVM3, which is one of the type of the GSLV Mark 3, that will be used for the Gaganyaan mission also. This was the question that was asked in 2018, that PSLV launched the satellite used for Earth resource monitoring, whereas GSLV are designed mainly to launch communication satellite. You people tell me the answer of this question in the comment box. You have to eliminate this option 3. And one other option is incorrect, and only one option is correct in this question. Identify the correct option and comment your answers in the comment box. Next topic is, can data centers in orbit solve for AI models energy demand? This is related to your GS paper 3, IT and computers, space technology, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 10. So the data centers are a growing share of global electricity consumption, and artificial intelligence is driving those power demands further up. The AI based data centers, they uses dense clusters of graphics processing units. So this CPU, or central processing unit, they can perform limited amount of tasks at any one point of time. But these GPU or the graphics processing units are much faster. They can do multiple tasks at any one point of time itself. For example, if you are saying that please give me multiple data related to any one topic referring to different sources. So obviously GPU will refer different sources, and then they will give data related to that topic in few seconds itself, or they will hardly take 10-15 seconds. And also what we are witnessing, that the generative AI boom, that also shows no sign of slowing down. The data centers are guzzling more than energy ever. So this, for example, what is this generative pre-trained transformer? So generative means it has creativity to generate original text as of it was written by the real person. Let's suppose we are making notes by looking into some looking into some sources. So similarly, this will also give a kind of content as if it is made by the real person, that is generative. Also, pre-trained means it is trained with vast amount of text from books, article, websites and more, and based on that they understand that what is the response that they need to provide. Also, transformer means architecture that helps it to understand the connections between world, context and even emotions, so that based on the prompt that we are giving, it can tweak the whatever the response that they will be providing. Also, we are witnessing that chat gpt, gemini and deepseek etc, whatever the large language models, llm based ai modules are there, their use is increasing, and because of which again that is further fueling the demand of overall electricity. Also, these ai based data centers are different, they need high bandwidth, not between the infrastructure they host and the users they serve, but within the data center itself and with others situated nearby. What is the bandwidth? That is the amount of data that can be sent at one point of time through a communication channel. Now it requires more transfer of data between the host and the server. Earlier it was the host and the server where the transfer is happening, but here in this case that they require that within the data center itself and with other situated nearby. So that transfer, that bandwidth which is very high, the transfer of data that is very high at a very high pace in a limited amount of time, that further increases the demand of the electricity. And to address this increased demand of electricity, Google came with this project Suncatcher that proposes dense satellite clusters that maintain constant line of sight within the sun to run on the solar power itself. So the current dependency on the fossil fuel based electricity generation, that will reduce. Why? Because these data centers will be based on the satellites in the orbit itself, from where they will be taking the solar energy and they will not find it difficult to run, and that is one of the feasible solution that can also reduce the overall energy demand and fossil fuel consumption. As the terrestrial AI facility space-based data centers require high internal bandwidth rather than high downlink speed, so that the processing of the data can improve. Google has found that its chips can resist radiation well, although cooling remains a significant engineering hurdle. Also, the economic feasibility is also one of the concerns that needs to be kept in mind for the future progress related to this particular project. So with AI in orbit, probably we will be able to reduce the cost. We will also be able to reduce the overall electricity consumption, particularly the fossil fuel based energy consumption. For example, as per energy statistic report which is released by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, more than 70% in India, whatever the electricity generation is happening and consumption is happening, that is based on the coal itself. So with more demand by the AI data center, probably this demand will further increase, but this project Suncatcher like projects in future can provide certain solutions. Next topic is Uttarakhand awarded leader status in Startup India ranking. This is related to your GS paper 3 employment growth and development, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 6. So in the state's startup ecosystem ranking 5th edition released by Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Uttarakhand has been recognized as the leader of developing a robust startup ecosystem. Also, if you see, this is the 5th edition of state's startup ecosystem ranking that is based on the 3 major pillars. First is based on the documents that are submitted by the states and the union territories, that what is the progress that they have done. They have been given a 75% weight. Then feedback from the startups across states and union territories, they are given again 15% weight, and private ecosystem mapping, they are given 10% weight. And based on these 3 pillars, the ultimate ranking is given. For example, the states are also divided in category A state and then category B states and union territories. The smaller are in the B and B states and union territories. And also there are more than 3800 plus documents that are submitted by 34 states and union territories across 19 action points. 12 number of evaluation committee meetings for reviewing whatever the submissions that were done by the states and UTs, and number of data points across 19 action points and 34 states units. That was the 26 lakh number of data points based on which this particular ranking is there, under which For category 1, best performer was Gujarat, top performer was Karnataka, Punjab, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh. Leaders are Rajasthan, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, etc. In category B states, best performer is Arunachal Pradesh and Goa. Top performer is Himachal Pradesh. Leaders are Manipur, Nagaland and Meghalaya. So based on this, probably this can be one of the potential question that who released this particular ranking, and the top states you can remember along with certain top performers. Our next topic is oil and gas sector calls for review of cess on indigenous production. This is related to your GS paper 3 mobilization of resources, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu page number 9. As already said in the first topic itself, that there are different industries and different sectors who are demanding support from the government. And that is because the budget will be presented on 1st February. In line of that, in that line itself, the oil and gas industry, they sought the government should consider reviewing the Oil Industry Development Board cess alongside providing incentives to enable a further boost to exploration activities, both mature and the frontier fields. Mature fields means which is already giving lot of oil and gas production. Frontier fields means the fields or the areas which are unexplored or underexplored, like Andaman basins, deep water basins, where the risks are very high, risk of accident, or even after investment, if they do not get proper oil and gas, so their investment might be jeopardized. So those are the frontier fields. And there is also a need for push for upgrading the refinery capacity as a catalyst to assist diversification efforts. And if they will have the less burden of the cess, probably they will be able to focus more on these activities. Also, this oil industry development cess that we are talking, that is levied at 20% on an ad valorem basis on the production from the nomination blocks. Nomination blocks are those blocks which are directly awarded to different PSUs or other companies like ONGC. Now, this ad valorem means that is according to value of the product. That is, whatever the value of the oil and gas will be there, 20% of that needs to be given as Oil Industry Development Board cess. And the industry is saying that it could be sought as per the slab system. For example, there are different slabs under the GST regime. So there can be different slabs on an incremental basis as per the oil prices, and accordingly government can take the cess. Also, if you see the difference between surcharge and cess, the cess that directly goes to the Consolidated Fund of India, but its utilization is restricted for that activity itself. Cess is levied on overall income tax liability, and that is levied for a particular activity itself. For example, if there is 4% education health cess, so that can be utilized for that purpose itself. So it can be utilized for specific purposes. Surcharge, that is an additional tax that needs to be paid by the high income earning individuals. That also goes directly to the Consolidated Fund of India, and it can be used for any purposes. It is not limited to be used for the specific purpose, which was the case with the cess. And there is no need to share the surcharge with the states, and that is the same case with the cess, that normally there is no need to share the cess proceeds with the state. And you can see that consistently the whatever the earnings central government is doing from the cess, that is consistently rising from financial year 20 to financial year 22. Our next topic is the fugitive economic offenders. This is related to your GS paper 2 government policies and interventions, and this is also related to your GS paper 3 money laundering, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 2. So this Fugitive Economic Offenders Act that came in 2018, the objective is to confiscate properties of the economic offenders who flee India to avoid any criminal prosecution, to avoid arrest. And who exactly is a fugitive economic offender? The person on whom the arrest warrant is issued. He is having the economic offences of more than or equal to 100 crore. He is involved in some fraud, money laundering, check bounce cases, etc. The scheduled offences that are mentioned under the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2018, that is counterfeiting of currency, check dishonor, money laundering, fraudulent deals. And the effect of confiscation of this property will be, the property will vest in central government, and government may appoint certain administrators to look up to that. Also, there is a provisional attachment. For example, assets can be temporarily attached while the fugitive economic offenders application is pending. Any of the declaration related to a person being the fugitive economic offender, that will be declared by the special court under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Court can confiscate the proceeds of crime, benami properties, or any other asset that are there in India or abroad. Also, there is bar on civil claims. For example, the fugitive economic offender cannot file or defend the civil cases, and that applies to the companies or the LLPs also. And there are different powers that are given to the ED, for example, under the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act, for example, for search and seizure, search of operations, seize documents and assets. The Prevention of Money Laundering Act that came in 2002, that provides that punishment for the money laundering. For example, money laundering means concealment or disguise of illegally obtained proceeds to appear lawful. Whatever the money that a person is generating from illegal activities, if they are trying to show that this is a legal, this is from lawful activity, that is money laundering. That is often linked to the crimes like drug trafficking, extortion, etc. The punishment under this PMLA for this: rigorous imprisonment, minimum 3 years, maximum 7 years plus fine. And then the investigative agency for this is Enforcement Direct, and then Financial Intelligence Unit. They can also receive, analyze and share suspicions in transaction data. The Enforcement Directorate, that is a specialized financial investigative agency, and they works under the Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance. And the Foreign Exchange Management Act and Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, these are the laws that are enforced by the Enforcement Directorate. Also, this under this particular case, that these are the two persons who are promoters of one of the real estate company, and they are declared fugitive economic offenders because of certain illegal activities and certain other things that they have done. For example, group promised high returns on investment but allegedly cheated the public, leading to money laundering charges. A prosecution complaint was also filed in 2022. Also, if you see that this was the question that was asked in 2025 prelims examination. The Directorate of Enforcement, here it was mentioned that it works under Internal Security Division 1, Ministry of Home Affairs. That is incorrect. The only first option was incorrect. All of these two options are correct, and correct answer was only 2. Even if you will apply some common sense and logic, here it is mentioning Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, revenue. So revenue functions will come under the finance itself. Directorate General of Systems and Data Management, and they are saying that carrying out big data analytics to assist tax officers for better policy and nabbing tax evaders. All the work related to tax officers, tax evaders, again that will come under the Ministry of Finance. So both these options were correct. Correct answer was only 2. Also, I know there are certain people who made mistakes in this question also. But again, if you think if you see, ED is constantly in news. Every week you will get some information related to Enforcement Directorate, and still if you are not able to know the basic information related to Enforcement Directorate, then that is not right on your part. So the correct answer for this was only 2. That is all from today's Analyst. Thank you very much. All the very best. Keep studying.